Dear Rector and members of the board of this university, dear members of the University Medical Center, the board of the University Medical Center, dear members of the department, who are a lot here, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to introduce the next speaker, as his appointment marks an event, a historic event in the 50 years history of the Department of Nuclear Medicine and Molecular Imaging. He is the first Greek professor. And although the department has already, in previous assignments, played with the idea and was put in the chair's position, he is the first one where quantification is the center part of his chair, quantification of medical images. And as a side note, he is a PhD from Imperial College in London, and that means that the number of PhDs from Imperial is now 2 in this department. Charalampos Tsoumpas, in the department better known as Harry, obtained both his bachelor and master's degrees in Athens. But the world was too small for him. He then decided that if he wanted to have an impact, he should spread his wings, and so he did, and he landed in London, where he did his PhD at Imperial College. Fascinated by the scientific opportunities in England at the time, he stayed in the UK, and for nearly 10 years, he was the leading force in imaging research at the University of Leeds. At the same time, he showed that he was a master in the art of collaboration, being involved in several large international projects, culminating in visiting positions at CERN in Geneva, Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, and the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, so very international and respected institutes. In addition, as a consultant, he has been involved in imaging developments of a number of commercial partners. Finally, at Leeds, he had an important educational task, supervising a substantial number of PhD and master students. And therefore, only a few years ago, there was no sign that he would move. It seemed as he would climb the academic ladder in England and stay in Leeds until he was old. And then came Brexit. And this turned out to have a profound impact on Harry's scientific outlook for the future. As I just mentioned, he was used to collaborate with many foreign scientists in large international projects. And sometime after Brexit, he phoned me and he said that he complained because he was losing his scientific partners, because his European allies did not want to write new scientific projects with a British group in it. That was impossible, so he was on his own in England. And having collaboration in his genes, he then decided that he should look around for positions outside of England, somewhere else in Europe. At approximately the same time, the professor of clinical physics in Groningen resigned, and the department was looking for a successor. Although the department is one of the leading centers in the world, especially with respect to clinical implementation and introduction of new radiopharmaceuticals, it was realized that there was a need for a leading scientist focused on quantitative imaging in order to pave the way for precision medicine with positron emission tomography. And it was, at least for me, it was no surprise that it did not take that long that the two found each other, the department and Harry, and that he moved to Groningen as professor in quantification in molecular diagnostics and radionuclide therapy. It really looked like a match made in heaven. We should not forget that the task for the new professor is challenging, as he needs to take the department up to the next level of precision medicine, developing novel quantitative methods that will enable tailoring diagnostics and therapy for each individual patient, which is really the future. The department has shown commitment by appointing him, so everything looks for a bright future. And I'm sure that in the end it will mean that Groningen will remain a world leader in nuclear medicine. For a professor in quantification, it is interesting to note that Harry starts his CV with Plato. Of course, he's Greek. But the saying he brings up is, science is nothing but perception. And I think that for somebody in quantification, that is a very dangerous statement, because what is perception? It probably has changed from the early days, but for me, perception now is what you like to see in the data rather than what the data really says. But I guess that the perception, the meaning has changed, and sometimes you can explain with your knowledge of Old Greek what it really means. Having said enough, I think it's time that we should listen to Professor Tsoumpas about his vision regarding the future of quantitative nuclear medicine. Professor Tsoumpas.
Dear members of the board of the university, dear colleagues, friends and family. All of us here today are made by molecules. And according to our genetic information, we develop, survive and inevitably die. This makes life a dynamic process, during which our molecules experience a constant battle with nature. For whatever reason, at some point, the mechanism of this dynamic process will fail, leading to a malfunction, which origin can be traced all the way to a molecular level. Our immune system is the first defensive mechanism to make things right. But what do we do when this is not sufficient? We have evolved in such a way to care for each other, which has led to the development of healthcare. And with weapons, our intelligence and knowledge, we're fighting to reverse the disease mechanisms and identify optimal ways to alleviate pain and extend our survival in this molecular drama. So how can we reverse a disease state back to a healthy state? There are two interconnected answers. First, we need to detect or even predict disease at the earliest possible stage, and then we need to identify a cure or how to delay the disease progression with relatively small side effects. Of course, there are plentiful, profound scientific achievements that have led us where we are today. In my lecture, I will concentrate on one technique which is an invaluable tool in early molecular diagnosis and therapy evaluation. This technique is positron emission tomography, or else PET scan. But how does PET work? Since more than a century ago, we can detect radiation consisting of high-energy photons that can penetrate the human body. Furthermore, we have found ways to manipulate biologically relevant molecules which we can administer into humans and measure how their bodies respond to them. This is possible by using unstable atoms which decay with emission of a positron. Positrons are antimatter electrons which do not exist in our universe naturally, but we can create them in the laboratory with appropriate nuclear reactions. I always find it astonishing that we can make use of exotic antimatter in medicine. It is exactly what inspired me to work in this scientific field. But how do positrons make it possible to see the molecules of life? The unstable radioactive atoms are attached to specific molecules which are then called radiotracers, or simply tracers. At some point, the radioactive atoms will decay by emission of a positron, which almost instantaneously will interact with an electron and disappear completely, where their joint energy is converted into 2 photons. By measuring several of these photon pairs with a PET scanner, we can identify what happens to these molecules in the human body with reasonably good accuracy, precision, and resolution. Let me give you an example how this technique helps patients. If we give to a cancer patient a radioactive form of glucose, we're likely to see a lot of photons coming from cancer cells, thus detecting them. If the patient undergoes therapy and less photons are measured from these cells by the scanner, it will mean that it is likely that the therapy is working at a molecular level. And this is incredibly important for the patient because it allows us to adapt the treatment plan very swiftly. This powerful feedback that PET provides is now used in clinical practice to help save human lives daily, or at least extend their quality life by a significant margin. But PET can be used to detect many more illnesses, such as atherosclerosis, infection, or inflammation, where millions of people are suffering daily. PET can help in detecting them early, even in patients without relevant symptoms, at which stage their treatment could be more effective and therefore help the development of drugs that can stop or even reverse the disease progression. And it can also assist in one of the emerging health challenges of the 21st century, which is related to the development of appropriate drugs for patients who suffer from multiple conditions or diseases. But PET imaging is currently underutilized and can provide even more valuable information. After this introduction, I will share my vision on my future research plans. PET is not merely a molecular imaging device, but I see it as a measurement device. What does it measure? It measures molecules and their concentration inside a living subject. And as by definition life is not a static process, PET can quantify how molecules travel inside our bodies. Therefore, it provides a direct way to measure the kinetics of biochemical reactions, which has not been possible to quantify otherwise. My immediate goal is to enable dynamic imaging and kinetic analysis in clinical practice for a range of standard tracers like radioactive glucose, as well as very fast ones such as radioactive water, or very slow ones such as monoclonal antibodies labeled with radioactive zirconium. Specific issues need to be resolved in the coming years to achieve more accurate and precise quantitative information in patients. For example, patient motion during the scan can mean that what we measure sometimes is incorrect, especially important if we wish to perform kinetic analysis. Similarly, imaging small regions in the body will require the further improvement of the current scanners and their reconstruction algorithms. Furthermore, there are many positron-emitting atoms that are not in clinical use because they emit additional photons, such as iodine-124, and therefore produce relatively poor image quality. I hope with my research in quantitative image reconstruction to bring them back to the game because many of them can have a central role in the thriving area of radionuclide therapy. But what else do we miss in quantitative medical imaging? As a physicist, I find it incomplete to provide a measurement without a corresponding error estimate. Uncertainty quantification, a well-established field in applied mathematics, is so much missing from PET imaging and clinical decision-making. Therefore, one of my areas of warm interest is how to provide meaningful error estimates to clinicians. And if this is not so practical, at least how to provide such information to intelligent computational software which could make practical use of it for a better overall clinical decision-making. A relevant research area which requires attention is the development of experimental tools for validating the accuracy and precision of PET imaging. Commonly, we make use of relatively simple objects filled in with radio tracers, which we call phantoms. The impressive developments of the last 2 decades in microfluidics, in 3D printing, or even bioprinting technologies could be utilized in the context of PET validation, where there is a lot of space to develop much more realistic phantoms, which would not only mimic human anatomy, but also human physiology. And then we could call them radioactive superphantoms. Let me now touch a sensitive issue related to PET imaging. How many of you today would be willing to take a PET scan? Probably many of you would feel scared because of the use of radioactive substances. Indeed, if there was not such a barrier, PET could be used more often to scan patients or also healthy volunteers, either for screening or for fundamental biological questions, and as part of the development of new and more effective drugs with less side effects. But how many of you would not be surprised if I tell you that some of the new PET scanners permit such a low dose scan equivalent to what one receives during an intercontinental flight? In my research, I was to investigate how to lower the dose for a range of tracers such that the technique is practically considered non-radioactive. I envision that we will soon be able to scan even young healthy volunteers or pregnant women much more easily. Furthermore, under my academic role, I aim to educate medical doctors, scientists, and the public not to fear the tiny amounts of radiation that we use, known as radiophobia. Once we reduce the radioactive dose from one tracer, it will become much easier to scan many tracers in each patient. The next exciting topic for my research will be to develop methods that will allow imaging 2 or more tracers simultaneously, with similar accuracy and precision as if they were scanned separately. This is what I call PET 2.0. Why this can be very useful? Imagine, for example, that we have one tracer, like radioactive glucose, which identifies cancerous cells, and another tracer directly related to a very expensive treatment of cancer, which, however, works only to a percentage of patients. Simultaneous imaging will allow to evaluate pixel by pixel the potential performance of such drug and swiftly decide how to proceed with treatment. In addition, the use of multiple tracers can be very helpful in understanding the potential crosstalk of different conditions such as cancer and cardiovascular diseases. And here, I will touch upon a strength that recent developments of total body PET imaging have brought. Medicine has traditionally specialized in different organs, for example, the brain or the heart, and still we have a lot to learn about various disorders. But do you know that all of us here today are atoms? Atom in Greek means person, because a person is not divisible. Does not it make more sense to study the human as one indivisible system, as one atom? I am now involved in exciting projects with my colleagues here at UMCG on quantification of crosstalk of different organs. For example, the gut and the brain, or the heart and the brain axis. Studying the human connectome may help towards the better understanding of disorders such as Parkinson's, depression, and many others. The principle of PET imaging can have additional important roles in healthcare. It can be used to guide not only molecular-based therapies, but also direct interventions. One such example is radiation-delivered therapy that is used to directly target and destroy molecules. PET could be used for optimization of proton therapy in real time to help eliminate cancerous cells more accurately. Or in future, PET tracers could be used to guide real-time robotic surgery, something we currently do mainly with optical imaging. However, the PET scanners for such interventions need to be redesigned, which leads to complicated image reconstruction problems. The scanners in these examples will have big gaps, and the current algorithms simply don't work. Furthermore, even if we find a solution to this problem, the images need to be reconstructed within a few seconds to allow real-time feedback, which makes it even a harder and exciting problem that I wish to solve. So far, I placed my passion, PET imaging, at the forefront of this lecture. However, it would be a remiss not to mention that there are a lot to gain by working in synergy with other imaging techniques, as well as the genetic data or even habitual data such as dietary, exercise, sleep, and lifestyle. The integration of big data in combination with the use of intelligent software will surely maximize the healthcare outcomes and could bring a quantum leap in digital medicine. This is an area I wish to explore in the future. And as much as I believe that PET provides great opportunities, we should fully acknowledge some key limitations if we wish to take it to the next stage. The crucial limiting factors relate to the costs and logistical issues that take to set up and maintain a properly functioning nuclear medicine department with the necessary facilities. Establishing good manufacturing practices in nuclear medicine and ensuring radiation protection requires a lot of resources. The high overall costs and the very tight regulations endanger making PET imaging and the advantages it brings in terms of early diagnosis and therapy optimization a technique only for countries or citizens who could afford it. One of our global challenges is the reduction of costs for entertaining the exciting benefits by all humans. Development of more efficient and cheaper PET scanners, as well as radiochemistry and radiopharmacy facilities, are areas where academia and industry can play a dramatic role. We, as scientists, need to put particular emphasis on how PET can become a less expensive technique without degrading its performance. For this reason, I am creating an international and interdisciplinary network of scientists to work on this challenge. Perhaps, however, the most expensive aspect of PET is associated with the development and clinical translation of the next generation of tracers for specific diseases. Even after years of thorough validation of a tracer, first in animals and then in humans, the rate of new molecules brought into the clinic is disappointingly low. And how can we ameliorate this is still a big question and challenge. I envisage in the coming years to work more closely with chemists and other scientists to identify new ways of redefining radiochemistry of the 21st century. For example, we have lately seen the design of alien proteins by artificial intelligence. Can we make use of such ideas to develop the radiotracers of the future? Today, I shared my research vision in quantitative molecular diagnostics and therapy assessment. This vision will be collectively shaped by my academic department, the faculty, and the university. Inevitably, any research priorities will follow the Netherlands and the European Union agendas in our ultra-fast changing world. But whatever the journey of extending the scientific boundaries of molecular imaging will be, it will not be a lonely one. As in the past, it will be a joint endeavor with my colleagues and collaborators, both in academia and industry, without whom so many innovations would not have taken place, and to whom I am truly grateful. And of course, I'm deeply thankful to my colleagues in the nuclear medicine department for their trust and for giving me the opportunity to join them on this fascinating journey. My future achievements will be shared by all of them. Ladies and gentlemen, I am convinced that PET remains the most sensitive method to measure molecules inside our bodies and trace their pathways from health to disease, forwards and backwards. Thus, it has a lot more to offer for detecting and understanding disease processes and optimizing precision medicine. Αγαπημένοι μου, σας ευχαριστώ για όλα. Ik heb gezegd.